Carrie Von Erich's life is usually told as a story of fame and tragedy. But beneath all of that lived a far more human truth. He was a young man drowning in expectations, while desperately trying to keep a collapsing family together. He wasn't just the handsome star with a superhero body. He wasn't just the Texas tornado spinning through arenas. Carrie was the son who carried his family's burden, the brother who tried to be everyone's strength, and the final spark in a dynasty that the world adored but that fate seemed determined to tear apart. To truly understand him, you have to understand the world he was born into, a world where applause was constant, pressure was suffocating, and loss kept coming like a storm that never cleared. Growing up as a Von Erich meant growing up inside a myth. His father, Fritz, wasn't just a promoter. He was the architect of an empire built around his sons. The boys weren't raised like regular kids. They were raised like heroes in training, expected to shine, to succeed, to continue the family legacy with the same intensity Fritz himself had poured into wrestling. But in that house, love and pressure were tightly intertwined. Success was celebrated. Weakness was hidden. And tragedy somehow always found its way to their doorstep. For Carrie, his brothers were more than family. They were his teammates, his examples, his role models. Losing them, one after another, didn't just break his heart. It carved pieces out of him that never grew back. By the time Carrie became the modern-day warrior, the Von Erich name was already scarred by the loss of his brothers. Every time another brother died, another piece of Carrie's heart went with him, but fans never saw it. He kept smiling. He kept fighting. He kept pretending he could carry the weight of the entire dynasty on his shoulders. What people saw was strength. What he felt was responsibility mixed with grief he never had time to process. Carrie's motorcycle accident wasn't just an accident, it was the beginning of a secret that would define the rest of his life. Losing his foot could have ended his career, but for Carrie, quitting wasn't an option. Wrestling wasn't just his job. It was the one thing he believed held his family together. So he pushed through surgeries, through unbearable pain, through the kind of physical suffering that would have broken almost anyone else. And when doctors amputated his foot, he made a decision that showed exactly who he was. He wasn't going to let the world know. He wrestled with a prosthetic hidden beneath his boot, refusing to let fans or fellow wrestlers see the truth. Not because he was ashamed, but because he was afraid that stepping away from the ring would shatter whatever was left of his family's unity. Imagine the emotional weight of that, performing in packed arenas, traveling nonstop, showering with boots on so no one discovered the truth. Every match he wrestled became a reminder of what he'd lost and what he refused to let go of. That stubborn courage made him a legend, but it also pushed him deeper into the cycle that ultimately consumed him. Painkillers dulled the physical torture, but they numbed everything else too. Slowly, addiction crept in, not because he wanted to escape fame, but because he wanted to keep going for the people who depended on him. He wanted to be strong for his father. He wanted to be strong for the fans. He wanted to be strong for the memory of his brothers, all of whom he believed he needed to honor through his own success to Carrie. The ring was the only place where he felt in control. The cheers reminded him he still mattered. The matches convinced him he was still strong enough to hold his family's legacy together. But outside the ring, things were crumbling. His marriage fell apart. Legal troubles piled up. His body grew weaker. And every quiet moment reminded him of the brothers he had lost, each one taking a part of him that he never got back. When Bret Hart revealed that, Carrie had spoken about hearing his brothers calling him. It became clear just how heavy his grief had become. He wasn't just fighting addiction or legal trouble. He was fighting ghosts that followed him everywhere. For Carrie, success never erased pain, it only pushed it deeper. His final day was not the act of a man who didn't care. It was the act of a man who felt he had lost every battle except the one he no longer wanted to fight. He hugged his father and said, "Dad, I love you." A sentence that carried decades of pressure, expectation, love, guilt, and exhaustion. Then he walked into the woods and ended a story that had become too heavy to carry. But if tragedy is all we remember, then we fail to understand who he truly was, because beyond the pain, Carrie lived a life filled with fire. He trained for the Olympics. He traveled the world. He became a world champion in front of 45,000 people. He brought joy to millions of fans who saw him as the perfect blend of power, beauty, and heart. He made friends who adored him. He raised daughters who still cherish his memory. And he remained, until his final breath, someone who wanted to make his family proud. Carrie Von Erich was not a tragedy. He was a fighter with a soul too big for the battles he faced. His story is not about how he died, but how hard he tried to live through pain. Through pressure, through expectations no one could survive alone. And if there is one truth his life leaves behind, it's this: sometimes the strongest people are the ones who break the quietest. Carrie never asked to be the last hope of a dynasty. He never asked to be the one who held the family together. He simply tried. He tried harder than anyone ever should have had to. And in that that relentless, heartbreaking effort, he became unforgettable. He wrestled across continents, not just to entertain, but to escape the silence that waited for him at home. Every plane ride, every hotel room, every locker room conversation was another chance to outrun the grief that chased him. Yet grief always travels faster. People called him a natural talent, but what he really had was a natural kindness. He cared deeply for other wrestlers, often lifting them up when he barely had strength for himself. He listened more than he spoke. He tried to be strong even when he was falling apart inside, even in the WWF. When the lights were brightest, Carrie entered arenas carrying both hope and heartbreak. Fans saw the Texas Tornado explosive, dynamic, unforgettable. But behind the curtain, the man limped on a hidden prosthetic, fighting a battle no one applauded. His success in the WWF wasn't just athletic, it was miraculous. Winning the Intercontinental Championship wasn't just a career achievement. It was proof that he could still be the hero his family expected. But every victory was temporary, and loneliness always returned. What makes his story so powerful is not that he hid his pain, but that he continued to give everything he had despite it. The Von Erich legacy wasn't carried by his muscles, it was carried by his heart. And even though his life ended too soon, the impact he left behind continues to shape wrestling culture today. Young wrestlers study his matches. Fans still cheer when old clips surface. Storytellers, creators, and dreamers all draw inspiration from the man who refused to quit, even when the world felt too heavy. The truth is, Carrie should never be remembered as a man defeated by tragedy. He should be remembered as a man who spent his entire life pushing back against it. A man who carried a legacy with pride, even when it hurt. A man who kept fighting long after the cameras stopped rolling. And perhaps that's the quiet beauty of his story. He never realized how many lives he touched simply by trying to survive his own. Carrie's life is not a warning. It is a reminder. A reminder that pressure can crush even the strongest among us, that grief does not care about fame, and that all of us, no matter how heroic we seem, need someone to lean on. The Von Erich name will echo forever in wrestling history. But Carrie's name will echo in people's hearts for his courage, for his kindness, and for the silent battles he fought with everything he had. His legacy lives in every fan who remembers his smile, every wrestler who learned from his resilience, and person who understands even the strongest heroes carry wounds unseen.